Welcome back to the highly original podcast. I'm Joe Martino,
Michael Ionary.
and I honestly don't want to do the episodes anymore. Like I'm
25.
I'm tired. I'm tired of saying the episode numbers. I honestly don't know, so I'm done. Anyways, so guys, we have a special. We got a special episode for you. We got a guest on. Parker Danks. We'll be introducing him in just 1 second. But he's joining us to do Game of Thrones. That's our topic for today. But real quick, I wanted to announce the merch has arrived and it's almost sold out. We only have hats left, right, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, you guys depleted all of our stock, and that's awesome.
Yeah,
we got 4 hats left?
I think we got like a couple hats left, and they're still for sale. But yeah, I mean, I think it was like yesterday we had half depleted, and then today it's pretty much 90% depleted. So, guys, get your merch while you can. Stock's limited. We'll do it again, but for now, this is kind of what we got. We might add some more if there's enough demand.
So you guys better be demanding.
Yeah. So, Parker, you are on, so I want to say hi to everybody.
Hey, guys. Thank you guys for having me on the podcast.
No, yeah, we're really excited. You've been kind of a long-established friend of the podcast. You actually made us professional podcasters. When you bought the first ad read that we had.
Hey, it was my honor.
So, I mean, you are already a pretty big part of the show.
Well, I got to say, guys, let me tell you this. I just really love what you guys are doing. You're bringing all these really good topics, and it's really good material to listen to when you're traveling, when you're on your way to work. I think you guys are really onto something. And I've been wearing my shirt, by the way.
Oh yeah. Parker did. He got like a prototype shirt.
Yeah, I got a shirt. I was honored, and I got to spend time with Joe in New York City. So
it's awesome.
And for those of you guys who don't know, Parker and I are friends from when he and I studied abroad in Italy together.
Yep.
And he's from Texas.
Yep, I'm from Austin, Texas. Right now I'm living in Houston, so I kind of go back and forth because I work from home. So I have the luxury of going back and forth because I don't really have a house right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, right now I'm in Houston. Austin's pretty icy right now. So I kind of get the best of both worlds until I get a place of my own. Okay. So yeah, I'm here in Texas. I know you guys are an hour ahead of schedule for me, so yes. In Pennsylvania. I'm super envious of y'all's food culture over there.
Well, I'm sure Austin's got to have some stuff,
yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah. We got barbecue and stuff. I just feel like you guys know what's up with the Italian food,
Oh, of course.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'd imagine Texas has a lot of great, like, brisket, ribs, all that good barbecue.
Oh, yeah. Right? We got that tacos. Yeah, man, we got some pretty good spots, but I love going to the East Coast to eat. It's like my favorite thing to do over there.
Yeah, me too, man. Oh, wait a minute. I live in the East Coast. But I want to go to Texas to eat, man.
Yeah, y'all come see me, man. I'll take y'all out.
Yeah. No, yeah, I mean, one day I'll come visit you. But Parker, I did want to give you the opportunity to give your side of the infamous Venice trip that I did share with the listeners in our WWE episode. So
yeah, let's go for it. Well, first off, to all the listeners, like Joseph and Mike said, I'm Parker Danks. I'm a songwriter in Austin, Texas. I work in music. I do it on the side. I paint. I draw. I'm the very artsy guy. And Joe and I, of course, met in Europe. So yeah, let's get to the bottom of it. So let me start from the very beginning. So I went to community college a little later in life. I was like 23. And before that, I was kind of working a bunch of jobs. I was doing a lot of acting.
You were an actor, right?
Yeah, I was an actor. I was doing that for a long time. And then I really wanted to get my education on. And so I went to community college. And when I was there, I saw this flyer. and it said study abroad. And I went, oh my gosh, I have to do that.
And you were also like, this is perfect place to meet a friend and convince them that you know how to navigate travel, and take them to a city and have no plan, and then we're about to sleep on the streets. So I want you to share your perspective of the insanity of Venice.
I'm building up to that. So my point of all this backstory is I worked so hard to get out there, right? And by the time I got on that plane, it was like a year later, saved up money. I also got some financial aid, like moved all my stuff out of my apartment to my parents. I got on that plane and I was like, I'm leaving me in Austin for a sec, because I'm having kind of an identity crisis at the time. You met me at like a peak of Parker not knowing who he was, trying to figure some things out. And
very unhinged,
and I told myself
man.
I was like, let's go hard. Like, let's live it up the next 3 months. And so what's funny about the Venice trip is that was the first trip I went outside of Rome, and you happened to be there. So
you roped me into that.
I know. Well, I was like,
want to go to Venice? I was like, oh, this guy seems like he knows what he's doing. Like,
yeah. Well, the thing is with the Venice trip was we just booked it and we were like, let's just go. And I already had that mentality of let's go. Let's like forget booking. I do that back at home. Like, let's just be these travelers. And so when we go, things didn't really go to plan. Like Joseph mentioned in the stories in the other previous podcasts, we were walking around Venice. We ran into Belgian, travelers.
They saved us, like the Belgians.
But Joseph's right. I was willing to sleep on the street that night. I was like, let's go. But I could really tell you were getting like
the terror that came over to me when he started talking like that, and everybody else was just okay with it. I was like, no. I was trying to get people's like phones to like find hotels. I was like, this guy's insane.
Well, I remember we were walking around St. Mark's, and you finally pulled me aside, and you put your hand on my shoulder, and you looked at me right in the face. You said, Parker, I gotta go home.
That was day
or back
two.
To Rome, I guess.
When I was like, what are we doing for sleeping tonight? And they were like, we don't know. I was like, all right, I gotta get out of here.
I know. I did feel really bad that we did miss you on that trip, and when we came back, I'm glad we were cool, because I'm glad you were. We made up for it at some beers at the Polo Station. Fun. But hey, we got a story. Like,
hell yeah,
and at least
something I wanted to get. There's a funny video that you took, and I'm in it, and it's us in the hostel. And if you could send that to me, I might post it on the Instagram so people can see how I was feeling
when you're just like in no mood to be recorded.
Oh yeah, like I'm just like, yeah, and like Parker's just like, we're all in Venice, like he's all like happy, like.
You got to meet a Parker that was just in a new spirit, and in a what's the word? A born again Parker in Europe.
Now, is this the same Parker we're talking to now?
I believe in a bit. It's like a more evolved Parker, but I will say, and I believe Joseph can agree, that both of us, that trip changed our lives.
Oh yeah.
It really did. I mean, it taught us a lot of valuable skills. It taught us a lot of people skills, traveling abilities, learning to like cooperate with people who are very different than you, like the people you live with.
I know what he's talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. But I actually have a little treat for you guys real quick.
Difficult people that we met. We both had our trials there, but it was a good time.
It was a good time. And I miss that trip so much. I just miss our random nights where we'd go to across the street to the Polo Station.
Yeah, it was our bar, El Lupo Station. That was the name of it. Mike, yeah. So it was I don't know if you got that El Lupo Station. It was like a craft beer bar in Italy.
I don't know if I heard.
No, you wouldn't.
Definitely.
You wouldn't. It's like small. Like it's
no. Yeah. Sounds nice though.
No, yeah, it was great. But Well, yeah, that's our introduction there, a little
Yeah,
background.
I'm glad we got to touch on that again.
And
In this
if you
stretch,
guys
2 minutes.
want to hear the Venice story, go back to our, I think, episode
So
19. Yeah, 19. And that'll give you me giving my account.
Well, I enjoyed hearing Parker's side of the story, man, because like you are just a free spirited individual and you just want to fly. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
I wanted to fly. I worked my ass off to get out there, and I just was like, I'm gonna take the next 3 months and live it up.
So obviously, we brought you here to talk about Game of Thrones,
Game of Thrones.
which is the extremely famous HBO series that wrapped up in 2019, and that's actually when I started seeing it. I joined in for the last episode, but I binge watched it. But it started in 2011, so I was right. I suppose I was thinking I just didn't want to say it until I was sure. But it was created by David Benioff, DB Weiss, and it is of course based off A Song of Ice and Fire, the novel series by George R. R. Martin. And it is I guess it was a high fantasy series. And I'm just going to go through the synopsis real quick. And bear with me, guys, because it is very complex show. So I would say it's like a high fantasy drama or series. And for those of you who don't know what it is, it's kind of like a Lord of the Rings-esque thing. So it's not Earth, but it's like a alternative world. And the main story takes place on the continent of Westeros. So that is mainly made up of this country called the Seven Kingdoms. And in the north, the border is cut off by this thing called the Wall, which is essentially a giant ice wall. And that is manned by the Night's Watch, which is a group of like sworn they're kind of almost like, I'd say like the Knights Templar, if anybody knows what it is. They're like warriors. They take a vow to be celibate and have no property or titles, and their whole life is to guard this wall against the White Walkers, allegedly. I mean, it was built like 8,000 years or something before the series begins. So it was built to protect from like these now what are considered fantasy creatures, and it's mainly used to protect against the people who live on the other side, the wildlings, which are kind of like nomads. So, and then all the way in the south, you have the capital called King's Landing, and that's with the sea, and kind of up near the wall, there's the kingdom of the north. So, it's kind of actually, if you see the maps, it almost looks like New Jersey, Westeros, I'd say. I don't know, Parker, if you would agree with me. If you've seen the map.
I would. And not only do we have Westeros, but we also have,
yes, Essos.
We have Essos on the east, which is where
the other continent.
Which is where Khaleesi starts, where Pentos and Bravos is.
Yes. Yes, and there's so much like stuff to get into. So I guess I'm going to try to break down to the beginning of the first season. So about 300 years ago, this dynasty from Essos, the other continent, they're the Targaryens, they had dragons, and they were able to conquer all the Seven Kingdoms and bring it under their wing. And after years, they lost their dragons. The dragons like died off; they went extinct. And their final ruler was the Mad King, and he went insane. This sadistic, cruel guy. And basically, what happens is his son, the prince, kidnaps Lyanna Stark, who is the daughter of the Lord of the North. So all the Seven Kingdoms have their own kind of sub king. Usually, they're called the Lord. And she's betrothed to Robert Baratheon, who is another lord. So the Starks and the Baratheons rebel against the Targaryens. They start fighting. They're winning the war. And in the final moments, this other noble family, the Lannisters, that are very rich. They turn on the Targaryens and they take the capital. And the king is killed by his bodyguard, who is also Sir Jaime Lannister, who is one of the Lannisters. So Lyanna dies. All the Targaryens die except for two who are children, and they're sent to Essos by the Loyalists. And now, so then I guess, yeah. So then we'll jump back again. Sorry, guys, this is very complex. So Robert Baratheon ends up marrying Cersei Lannister, and he's ruling for 17 years. So that's when the series begins. The chief advisor, the prime minister in the show, it's called the Hand of the King, Jon Arryn, mysteriously dies. So then Robert Baratheon calls Ned Stark, the Lord of the North, who he fought with, and Lyanna's brother, to come and be the new Hand of the King. And during that time, members of the Stark family learn of a pretty bad secret, which is all of Robert Baratheon's kids are not his kids, but they're actually the love children of Cersei and her brother Jaime. And it's like, pretty of incest. So none of them are legitimate. So therefore they cannot inherit the throne. It's also against their religion too in the thing. And when this starts to get revealed, Ned Stark is turned on and executed, and both of Robert Baratheon's brothers make claims for the throne. And now there's a bunch of war. And then meanwhile, over in Essos, the assumed prince Viserys Targaryen is trying to marry his sister to this warlord who's of this group called the Dothraki. And they're trying to come back to conquer. So that's kind of the basic rundown of the beginning series. So
you summed it up, yeah.
Yeah.
That was a great synopsis.
That's barely touching the surface, Mike. Mike has not seen this show.
No, I have not. And that's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. I will say, if you are in any way influenced by fantasy, it's for you.
No.
But, a lot of people get turned off by the incest part. That's what a lot of people will say in terms of
you're supposed to.
Oh, there's incest and all. And what people need to realize is during that time that was going on. This is a very there's mythical creatures and stuff, but there's a little bit of dark age.
Also, the incest is not portrayed as good, isn't it? Everybody who finds out about it is appalled.
Yeah, they're
it's not. Yeah.
And they call him out on it, especially Ned Stark. He called out Cersei in the first season, and she was intimidated by that.
Well, yeah, and that's his death really starts this big war.
Yep.
So, So, Parker, to kind of get the conversation rolling, I want to ask you who your favorite characters. Who's your favorite protagonist?
Oh, you see, it's so challenging with the protagonist in the show because sometimes I'll focus on so many different characters that are the main character. But
in Game of Thrones, a lot of these characters are sort of morally ambiguous.
Yep. Now I was reading something saying technically, I don't know where I read this, but Tyrion is the main protagonist. But it's a really hard to say, man. But
just who's your favorite? That's
in terms of my favorite, I would probably have to say Arya's story. I like Arya.
Okay, Arya Stark.
Arya Stark. And for everyone who needs to know who Arya Stark is, she is the second daughter of Ned and Catelyn Stark, who Catelyn is also known as Catelyn Tully. Get into that later. But she is the tomboy. She wants to fight. She wants to be a warrior, while her sister, Sansa, is more ladylike. During the decapitation of Ned Stark, she gets kidnapped, so no one finds out who she is and kills her. Pretty much.
She's not kidding. I think he's protecting her. Yeah,
he's protecting.
Oh wait, are you talking about the
word for good kidnap?
Are you talking about the Hound?
Yeah, that's later, but another guy.
Yeah, he's kidnapping her. The other guy
kidnaps her.
The other guy is just protecting her.
I do believe that Arya has some of the best like just scenes and some of the best like themes of the show. One of my favorite quotes in that whole series comes from Arya's mouth, and it's the scene where her and the Hound are on the way to the Tullys to see the Vale. And to the viewers, the Vale is pretty much like a castle on top of this mountain.
Oh yeah,
it's pretty intense.
Yeah.
And they're going through a field of dead soldiers, but there's one soldier who's barely alive. And they go up to him and they check up on him, and he's pretty much dying. He says, "Do you guys have any wine?" And Arya and him have this discussion, and she looks at him and says, "Hey, nothing can be worse than this." And he looks at her and goes, "Honey, nothing is worse than this." And then she looks at him directly and goes, "Nothing isn't better or worse than anything. Nothing is just nothing." And for some reason, it was just like this philosophical quote that I really just blew my mind. The acting of Macy Williams, the girl who plays Arya Stark, I just thought it was so crazy, that scene. It blew me away with that one line, "Nothing is just nothing." It almost gave me chills. And of course, they end up putting the guy out of his misery, and then they go on. But there was something about that scene. It was, even though it was so simple, it just catches the attention of someone like me that sometimes one quote can drag you into the show. And I think that one quote got me in. So yeah, and along with her story arc and her character arc, I really like it when she went to the Hidden Face Gods to see Joaquin Chagin. Am I saying his name right?
I think it was Jakar. No. It's
Jakar.
Jaqen Jakar or something like.
Yeah, he was also known as like
but that might have not even been his real name.
Face God.
Like that was, that was the whole thing about the faceless men. It's like this kind of cult of assassins, and to join, you give up your identity. So we don't even know if that was his name. Like that was maybe one of his personas.
Because she approached and it was a different man, but it was also him, and he was like, "The name, a man doesn't go by that name here." Yeah. So during that training, it was just, her power was intense. She got back at the Freys, which that's a different story also.
Yeah.
She got all the revenge that the characters pretty much wanted.
She essentially goes from a little girl to becoming a soldier.
Like almost like a samurai.
Yeah.
I mean, and I like her story, but man, I also like the Hound. I think he's just, I think just them as a duo was like
I mean, they were definitely good.
But Joe, to flip this around a bit, let me ask you, who was your
my favorite protagonist, and you mentioned it, I would say Tyrion Lannister. Tyrion is the youngest of the Lannister family, and he's played by Peter Dinklage, I think, brilliantly, and he is.
Which is obviously also one of the only American actors in the show, along with Jason Momoa and someone else.
Actually, I didn't know that. That's a good little fact.
I think they had other American actors, but they were like the main ones.
Yeah. But obviously Peter Dinklage has dwarfism, so his character does too. And because of that, he is reviled by most of his family and a lot of Westeros. Because they don't look highly on people with that condition.
Yeah, they consider him a bastard.
Well, they don't fully, but they don't fully, but they don't like him. He's kind of not welcome in a lot of circles.
Tyrion has that line where he says,
he does
that father's eyes, a dwarf is a bastard.
Yeah.
So it's implied.
Yeah, it's but he still is a Lannister. He's entitled to certain claims, although his father wants to make sure that he doesn't inherit the titles. But he goes from this kind of disaffected outcast who frequents brothels and just drinks to becoming a crafty statesman. And as a political science major, I loved all the politics of Game of Thrones, and I really like his story arc, and I like that because of his outcast status, the compassion he has for other characters, and also just kind of how his journey. I mean, I think one of the greatest scenes in the whole show is his trial. I don't know if you remember that, when he's framed for assassinating the boy King Joffrey, who's this like Cersei's son, who's a tyrant. And he's being framed, and his father knows he's being framed, but his father doesn't care. Like he's willing to kind of get rid of him. And I think that performance was excellent when he says, that whole, he's like, I've been on trial my whole life for being a dwarf. He's like, that's what I'm guilty of. And
he says, I did not kill Joffrey, but I wish that I had. Watching your vicious bastard die gave me more relief than 1,000 lying whores.
Yeah.
That's the scene. You showed me that one, right?
Yeah, because it's
that was so powerful, man. That was intense.
I demand trial by combat.
I demand a trial by combat. That was one of the best acted scenes, man.
I completely agree. So he would definitely be my favorite of the protagonists. But now I kind of want to go into, on the other side, who's your favorite antagonist? And I really didn't want to say, like, who's your favorite good guy or hero? Who's your favorite, villain or, bad guy? Because, like, it is so morally ambiguous with some of these characters.
Right. It seems like how you're explaining it, like, every region of this world has their good and bad guys perceived differently by other parts of.
Also, I showed you a scene, Mike, where it was the Lannister army versus the Targaryen. I don't know if you remember that one, Parker. And Mike's like, all right, who's the good guy? And I was kind of like,
it's hard.
The thing you kind of get to decide.
Yeah.
I think Dany kind of starts to piss people off at some point in the show. And at the beginning, we're all rooting for her because she's very vulnerable.
And that's Daenerys Targaryen. That's the sole Targaryen. Heir to the Targaryen dynasty.
Her brother Viserys thought he was the dragon, but he wasn't the dragon at all. She was indeed the dragon. She was resilient to fire, and he wasn't. And that's how he died, for being cocky, pretty much, and thinking he was.
Oh, that's a great scene, though. Yeah.
It's such a great scene. But like, to answer your question about protagonist, I kind of already answered it. Oh, antagonist, right?
Yeah, antagonist.
I think I already answered it. The Hound. I just love his story. At the beginning, we're looking at the Hound, and he's kind of like this jerk who does what the king commands him to do. But once you get to know him, and he's like a
warrior.
He's like a warrior. The listeners, yeah. You get to know his story, and then he becomes a little bit more vulnerable. And he talks about his brother, who is this like
mountain.
The mountain, who's this titan beast who like physically abused him as a kid, and he's the reason why he has a burnt face. You start to realize this guy is fearless, and he's got some of the best, funniest quotes, and that guy knows how to use the swear word.
But he's not fearless. He is afraid of fire.
I know, that's what I'm saying. He is fearless, but he's got one like kryptonite, pretty much, which is
it really is
the fire. And he's saying, I can't do any fire. He can't go near it. He freaks out if it's near him, and I just love that was like his. Not only his story, but that's what ended him, too. He finally built up the courage to throw him and his brother. I'm sorry, Mike, I hate spoilers, but I know that's part of what we're doing today. Him and his brother.
If anything, you guys will make me want to watch.
Yeah, so I just love what he stood for. He also had some of the funniest quotes. Like, he had the best one-liners, and he really knew how to swear, properly.
Yeah.
Like, he just knew how to insult people, like Brianna Tarth. That also is one of the best fight scenes in like cinema history. Is the fight?
I love Brianna Tarth,
the Hound, and I do too. And Brianna Tarth. That scene was insane.
Oh yeah, no. I guess for me, my favorite of the antagonists, I think. Cersei Lannister, of course, looms large as an antagonist. She's the primary villain of the series, no doubts about it. She's interesting to kind of study, or from the political science aspect. Like, I think she really is like an irrational like leader. She like just goes on impulse. She does not think things through. She starts a war. She starts like everything's like kind of her fault in a way.
It really is. But as much as we hate Cersei, we gotta have her for some reason. Like, we just
she makes the series go on. But I might pick Tywin Lannister, who is the Lord of the Westerlands and is the father of all the Lannisters.
Yep.
There's so many good villains, but I might go with him because he is just so obsessed with status. The status of his family comes first, and like he will overlook things. Like it's implied that he knows Jamie and Cersei, his two children, are having a sexual affair and that they've had kids together. But he ignores it because that would ruin the family. And he hates his son Tyrion, who is arguably the most moral and like the most, valuable asset. Because he's a dwarf, he wants nothing, like he doesn't like him. And there's that side of him. But also when Arya briefly serves as his like assistant when she's kind of trying to get back to friendly territory during the war, you do see a side of Tywin where he is genuinely kind to her and giving her advice, and I just think that's interesting because this man who's so unfeeling to his own family,
I will say,
is being a father figure to some strange, who he thinks is a peasant girl. Like, I enjoyed him, and his death scene is I think one of the best, where Tyrion, of course, shoots him with a crossbow while he's on the toilet.
While he's on the toilet.
And it is
also like one of the most rational. He's probably the most rational Lannister, even sometimes more.
Well, yeah, he's able to win a war without winning any battles. I mean, like, he's yeah, I would say I agree with you when you're saying that. I think Tyrion is rational, but of the bad Lannisters, for sure, Tywin is a talented politician. I completely agree with you,
and he's a good warrior too.
I mean, we don't see too much about his warrior.
Well, there's that scene where he comes back from the tent and he's almost like leading like the end of the war, and he like
fought.
And it's like like some of the presidents in our history that fought in the wars.
But he loses almost. They only won one battle against the Starks in that war, but they still won the war. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because of strategy. Because he was good at strategy.
I think there was that Battle of Blackwater where.
Well, yeah, but that was against Stannis. That wasn't against the Starks.
Yeah, I was just.
And he wasn't there.
I know. Yeah, this is kind of off topic, but the Battle of Blackwater. This is some funny trivia. Like they were supposed to do more of that, but they didn't have the budget like they do with all these other battle scenes. So I think they had to cut it by blacking out Tyrion. He like blacks out and wakes up. You remember that? Like, yeah. So like I heard they didn't have like the budget to like film all of that. They could only do some of it because of their budget. And then later in the show, obviously they were making more money. Then they got to do more.
But something I always wonder, Parker, and I said this to Mike when I was showing him in a clip. I was like, wonder what the horse budget alone, the budget on horses alone was for this show.
And costumes and attire. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That stuff's expensive.
But like horses alone, there's like thousands of horses. Yeah. And like they have to like make horses look like they're dead and like stab horses. Like but
I'm sure a lot of the horses were CG.
No.
None of them were?
I don't think they were. I think
it was real and practical effects. I mean, maybe like distance shots were CGI, but there are plenty of close-ups where it's clearly
a horse. But I'm saying like a landscape shot or a wide shot where you see thousands of horses. Maybe
they still had to have used like hundreds of horses.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Mike, you didn't even watch the shit. No, you're right. You're right.
I'll be quiet. No, I really do. Real quick, guys. I both of you guys talking. I really do want to watch. But something Parker said. You quoted, "Nothing is nothing," and you said then they took him out of his misery and they went on. When you said that, that gave me chills. So, your quote mixed with the quote from the show, along with everything Joe showed me, I feel like I'm missing out on a lot.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
It's a very powerful scene. I just love all her scenes, and her and the Hound. They're just a great
that was a good
camera duo.
Yeah.
Because when you said that, I looked over at Joe, and for a second he thought I was going to say something, but I was just kind of like, I had goosebumps for a second, man, when you made that quote.
But to get along with our conversation, because I have two more big questions. One, I think the biggest question. One, I always like to ask people this question, Parker. Which character has the best claim to the throne? And this is not who do you want to be on the throne. Who do you think like had the best claim?
I really want to say Jon Snow because of a few reasons.
Okay.
Jon Snow not only was partial Targaryen,
I'm so glad you said him because it's not who I chose, but it's equally like
you watch the entire series and the things he put up with and the leadership that he did. He's a great soldier, he's a great leader. All those battle scenes where he went through hell and he made it happen still. And he was a good, genuine guy. Like, you know, he could lead.
But for the listeners who don't know who Jon Snow is, he is Ned Stark's bastard. But later on, we learned that he is actually the son of the Targaryen prince and Lyanna Stark, born of actually a love marriage. So yeah, but Parker, please continue. I just wanted to give a little detail there about.
You basically summed up John pretty well there. But yeah, I just think the fact that he went through all those battles, he managed to get the wildlings over across the wall, which had never happened. He joined forces with them, with the crows at Castle Black and everything. Him fighting all the wars, him being a great leader, him going to meet Dany, him allying with Dany. I think he just kind of ran the show as a great leader, and that's what sitting on the throne's about. And what we've realized with the show and what we've learned about is a lot of people sitting on that throne during that whole series shouldn't have had that throne. Like Joffrey, to anyone who doesn't know what Joffrey is, well, I say what Joffrey is because he was a freaking animal. Joffrey was the third son of Cersei and Jaime Lannister, the bastard son.
Oh, he was the first. He was the oldest.
Oh, I say third? Oh, yeah, he was the first.
Yeah, he was the oldest child.
He was the oldest child, but he was like an animal. He was like a monster.
He's a sociopath.
He's a sociopath. He loved torturing people. He loved torturing Sansa. He just was crazy. So it would be nice to see somebody like Jon sit on it.
All right, well, I'm going to come back at you, though. I didn't ask who's like, I agree, he's a good guy. But I'd say the person who has the best claim to the throne is Stannis Baratheon. He is the next of kin of Robert.
I couldn't stand Stannis.
but he's the legal heir to the throne.
I know, he sucks, though.
And Stannis is Robert Baratheon's brother, who is very emotionally like distant, and he has kind of allied with a kind of fanatical priest of this fire-centered religion, and his wife is like really devoted. He's kind of like opportunistically devoted because people in the priesthood of this religion, they do have some magical powers. Sometimes not, and his fanaticism ends up resulting in like some human sacrifices, including that of his own daughter, and that's sort of at the end of his arc. So by no means is Stannis good, and he's not a very compassionate leader at all, but he has the legal right. The Targaryens lost the throne. The Baratheons sit on the throne rightfully because the Targaryens took it by force. They got overthrown. The Baratheons are on the throne now. So unless someone overthrows the Baratheons, no. Stannis is the rightful heir. He's not a good guy, though. I'm just talking legalistically, Parker.
Oh, legalist. Yeah, I guess you're right there. But
Mike, did you want to say? You want to jump in?
I was going to say, Parker, you say how you feel, man. You don't think so? You don't think this guy deserves to be on the throne, man?
No, he doesn't.
But deserves and has legal right. That's two separate arguments.
But I think the show goes against who's legally right on it anyway. So, like, in terms of who has the right claim, all these characters were like, no, we don't care about who has the right claim.
But that's not my question.
I know. I'm just saying, I'm just thinking in like Westeros terminology here because, it seems like it's just a huge battle for the throne at this point. But you're right. You are right about who has the right claim, but I still think Jon Snow deserved.
Okay. Well, that, yeah.
And that's how I think of the throne, is like, who really has the right to sit on it? Like,
I mean, in the end, I'd say Gendry, who was Robert Baratheon's bastard, who was legitimized
Gendry
by Daenerys. Although, do we want to count that legitimization as valid? Because technically, Stannis was the rightful king, so, and he didn't do it. So maybe, yeah, at the end of the show, no one has a legal right because all the Baratheons are dead. So
now let me ask you guys a serious question: could a dragon take the throne?
So in the show, no, but the dragons are like, they're animals, but they're smarter than like most animals. Like they're kind of, right? Wouldn't you say so, Parker? Like they have a higher intelligence. Like they're not people, but
especially Drogon, the main dragon, the biggest dragon. Yes.
Like,
well, they have moments where they like fly in territory that gets them killed, and they kind of a little bit more like, I don't know.
But they can tell
their flying
who's
ability.
good and who's bad. Like they can, or like who's on their side and who's not. Like they're able to differentiate stuff like that.
But they learn about their like fire and breathing control growing up. Obviously, it's like us learning how to walk or drive a car. They really learn. It's almost like their breath of their fire and how to use it and when to use it. And of course, they take the commands of Daenerys Targaryen. So when she says Dracarys, they go crazy.
Because she's descended from the Valyrians, who like their whole civilization was riding dragons. So like there's kind of, I feel like it's implied there was like a, I don't know, kind of a like Avatar Na'vi type like telepathy between dragons and the Valyrians. But I kind of moved kind of the conversation towards its end. Dude, I just want to briefly touch with you, Parker, like the impact of this series. I mean, it was, I don't have the numbers on me, but I think it was one of the most popular TV series of the 2010s. I mean,
the most viewed HBO series.
Show
of all time, actually.
All right. Thank you for, like there's some fact like that, but that's okay. Insane. But what I think, Game of Thrones, and this might sound kind of weird, but Game of Thrones comes along, I think, at the same time, like the Big Bang Theory is popular. And I think shows like this kind of elevated, like, it being okay to be a nerd and be into fantasy stuff. I guess maybe the Big Bang Theory did like different things, but I'd say like, it was a mainstream accepted thing, and people were becoming more and more openly into this kind of stuff. And I would say it really did start to elevate the more mainstreaming of fandoms, I'd say. I don't know, or it came along at that time. Like, would you agree with this? Like, I don't know, like the rise of cosplay and stuff.
I think what Game of Thrones did is it brought a show in that gave somebody a new excitement. You had The Sopranos in the early 2000s that gave people that same excitement. That's what Game of Thrones was.
Okay.
It was this new thing.
It's a cultural phenomenon, right?
And to me, and I have some things to say about this, like sentimentally, is Game of Thrones will always have a place in my heart. Now, I know the 8th season had a lot of controversy, but to me, it's still the best show of all time. And yes, I say of all time because not just the show and the content and like the dragons and the fantasy, but I also associate it with the beautiful memories of my 20s, like working hard in my early 20s and coming home and being like, finally, I get to look forward to an episode of Game of Thrones. And my brother and I would have parties where we'd have like wine and we'd turn the lights off and we'd have candles and like we would make it a theme and we would go to events. And it was just like, it wasn't just about the show. It was also the whole fantasy and Game of Thrones culture that was involved and just looking forward to the next season. And they would always take so long to come out, but we were always so happy when they did. And so when it wrapped, even though it wasn't the best season finale, in my opinion, I was still so sad. And like, I had to like watch shows like Vikings and stuff, which I think is a great show. Great show.
I know, but it's like,
but like I had Game of Thrones withdrawal. Like I got so obsessed with the show and it's a show that summarizes my 20s pretty much. Like it always holds a special place in my heart, and that's the impact on it. It will always be like a part of me because I was so invested in that show. I read the first book. I have a bunch of fantasy books on it. So yeah, I'm a huge Game of Thrones fan, and I know the last season wasn't that great, but I don't care. I still think
so you would say you enjoy the show. No, but
no, that was great, man. That was a great little summary.
Yeah, but I guess it's not just like the cosplay part, but like I think it did mainstream or mainstreamize, like, you know, not just people who are cosplay. I mean, that's a little bit more out. That's not necessarily mainstream, but like being into fantasy. I guess that's what I mean by that. Like, you were seeing people like of all types and subcultures and ages watching this show about dragons and, you know, knights with flaming swords and these like Mongol type people, the Dothraki, like running across the screen, going, yeah. Like, I mean, like, you know, so that's what I'm getting on with it. And I do agree, like, you know, the final season, yeah, the writing did decline.
Yep.
I think some of the characters started to become a little bit parodies of themselves, but I think that happens like a lot of times with any show that goes on like too long. But I think a lot of times when shows go on for a lot of seasons, that happens to a lot of them.
Yeah.
You know, I was all cool with the final season, I'd say, until the final episode. That's where a lot of people tap out the last two seasons. I kind of go the last episode. I'm like, okay.
Honestly, the last season was all right. I still loved the long night. That battle scene, a lot of people hated on it.
Oh, yeah.
I have an unpopular opinion where I loved it. I loved the idea we couldn't see much because I felt that the director put us in their view, that we were going through the battle with them as the viewer. And I was like, yeah, but I was invested in the show to see everything. You know what? Sometimes I don't want to see everything. Like, sometimes I want to just feel the character.
Yeah, theater of mind.
Feel what they're feeling and see what they're seeing. And if you're on a battlefield and you're fighting White Walkers late at night in the cold, you're going to see a bunch of blur. And that's just kind of like,
these are essentially like ice zombies, Mike. Just so you.
Yeah, White Walkers are zombies, guys. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Essentially. No, you're fine. I'm just. But I was talking to you yesterday. I think that my opinion of that scene is, I think they're like, let's save money by not CGIing all these ice zombies.
Yeah, I think they were probably running out of budget, to be honest.
I think that might have been more of a. We're gonna have to have a dragon burn down a city in the later seasons. We might want to save our budget.
But from like a filmmaking point of view, sometimes it is though, like theater of mind. Like you all right, for example, if we're shooting a scene and someone's getting killed, right? Well, yeah, you could film that death and you could do the effects, but what if you just pan the camera away to a wall and you hear the killing?
Yeah.
We don't see it. That paints a totally different picture in your mind. Like Parker said, you loved it. You said that's an unpopular opinion, but I think a lot of people would agree with you on that. It's almost more impactful.
I loved it. That was my favorite episode of the entire season.
I will say in that episode, something that is haunting that has to do with not being able to see is the Dothraki, you know, screamers, the kind of nomad class, like these warriors that serve Daenerys. One of the red priests, it does a spell that makes their swords go on fire, and they all start charging at the enemy into the darkness, and like one by one, all the swords go off. It just gets dark, and like we know what happened is they're getting massacred. Like, what's that?
I'm getting goosebumps visualizing.
Yeah, no, that is a great scene, and it does play with the lack of visuals. And then all of a sudden, there are a few guys on horses running back. They're covered in blood, and like that's a great scene. But kind of, I mean, we could talk about Game of Thrones forever, guys. Yeah, I mean, it is such a extensive lore, and even more so with the books, which I have not read. But kind of to wrap up our episode, I wanted all three of us to kind of go around and say, what sci-fi or fantasy universe would you want to live in? That's to be a fun little question to wrap up the episode. We'll let Mike go first, if because Mike's had to be silent most of this episode.
No, dude, I enjoyed listening though, man. Those are cool. Great. I would love to be in the Star Wars universe.
Okay.
Just straight up with it, man. I don't care what planet. I don't care where. Well, I do care what planet, actually. No, I care a lot.
What planet?
I would love to be on like Naboo or something like that.
All right, yeah.
That'd be awesome.
It's essentially like the Italian Riviera, right?
Right, yeah, that's why. That's why. And I don't know, man. I love, like, how you guys are talking about Game of Thrones. I love Star Wars. And I'm sure you guys do.
I love I'm a huge fan of the original Star Wars. Like
the trilogy, yeah.
I don't really like the new Disney stuff. But
right.
I'll also go see it with my friends and have a good time. But I love Star Wars too, man. Star Wars is revolutionary.
Yeah, man. So if I had to be stuck in a sci-fi fantasy world universe, dude, I'm going to Star Wars any day of the week. Place on Sunday.
All right. Parker, who would you choose?
That's easy. Middle Earth, specifically in the Shire. But I want to stay in the Shire. I don't want anywhere near a Uruk-hai orc. Anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about, I'm referring to Lord of the Rings.
The bad guys in Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings is still my favorite movie of all time. I read the first book. I love it. I have a thing where I have to watch all 3 movies back to back once every few years. I don't do it every year because I don't want to get sick of it. So I do it once every few years. I did it last year when I had COVID. So yes, Lord of the Rings all the way. But I want to stay in the Shire and drink with the hobbits, pretty much.
Okay. All right.
What about you, Joe?
Joe.
I'm like thinking, I'm not really sure. I mean, part of me was like thinking, all right, because a lot of these franchises are they're filled with death and destruction, right? So it's like, where am I like least likely to get like murdered by like a space Nazi or an evil Shrek? I was like, Harry Potter. I'm not even a big fan of Harry Potter, but I mean,
Earth? You're
just going to school and learning spells. Like, I feel like it's a little safer, no? But I feel like if I get to say like Naboo, I mean, like that's pretty safe.
But Joe, in these worlds, you might have special powers to fight people off.
Ooh, yeah. Do we get powers?
But I'm thinking like most likely we're not the main characters, and we gotta make sure we're protected.
It's almost like celebrity life. Like you might just be like just a person in life, like in these worlds where you're just like a hunter or gatherer, and that's your life. I would like to have superpowers though.
I'd probably end up being the frog that Jabba the Hutt eats.
Yeah, like you know what I mean.
Knowing my luck.
That is so funny, Mike.
I would spawn in a jar, and then I'm like, oh, all right.
But you know what? I might say Star Wars in the end.
Oh,
if I get to pick the planet that I'm on, I'm gonna go with that. I'll have to get back to you on which planet. But yeah,
I mean, there's some peaceful planets out there, as long as it's not like Mustafar.
Until the Empire shows up, like
I'm talking pre. Well.
Then you got robots marching all over the place, being killed by Tamara Morrison clones.
Since the two of you said the same answer, what would be your favorite Star Wars character?
Parker, we already did an episode on this thing, and we both said Obi-Wan.
Yeah, Obi-Wan is a gangster.
Episode. I would say, even though I'm not the biggest fan of the new Star Wars movies, still my favorite character is Darth Maul. Just because, his character was so sick.
Yeah, he's cool, man. With the double, I remember seeing that. Like, I didn't see it in theaters, Phantom Menace, but like I remember seeing it for the first time, seeing him ignite the double lightsaber, and I was just thrilled, man. I couldn't believe it.
All right. Well, before we go into a Star Wars thing, we got to wrap this episode up.
All right, guys, let's get into Star Wars now.
Yeah. So, Parker, thank you so much for joining us. Can you just let the listeners know where they can find your music?
Yeah.
You got anything upcoming?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for having me on the show. This was a really good time. Like I said, I could talk about Game of Thrones for hours, and so this was a really fun night to spend a Thursday night. You guys can find me on Instagram, Facebook. If you need my name, it's P_Danks on Instagram. On Spotify, it's just P Danks, P.Danks. You'll see a picture of me. I have some photos out with me having weird contact lenses in. That's where you can find me. Same thing with SoundCloud, P Danks, Amazon Music, iTunes. Give it a listen. I just released a music video with the very talented Daphne Martinez, a song called Carry Me Home, which we submitted to American Songwriter. Wish us luck, guys. And I got some new projects coming. Shout out to my buddy Cesar Reyes for also producing a lot of this music and helping me master a lot of the music we've done. So you guys can find me there. I'll be posting a lot more music this year and some more art projects. Thank you guys for advertising for me.
Thank you.
And showing my ads. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, the music's awesome, man. Especially what you and Daphne Martinez got going on, man. Really good stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So with that, guys, remember to get your merch before it might be gone for a little bit.
Right.
And other than that, we got more guests coming up. We've been booking things. We're doing good. Mike's gonna be doing stuff with the studio soon.
Yeah.
So all good things. So take care, guys.
All right, Parker. Thank you, man. Joe.
Yeah, thank you guys.
All you guys be safe out there.